Walking alone into the crystal-adorned ballroom where my younger sister Mia's wedding reception blazed with opulence, I felt every calculating stare pierce through me. The whispers began before I'd taken 3 steps. The Blackstone family owed money. Older prejudices regarded me like I was a virus that had somehow breached their sterile world. My name is Alex Chen. For the past 7 years, I've been a financial investigator specializing in tracking illicit money flows through international banking networks. While my Ivy League classmates climbed corporate ladders and collected trophy spouses, I was following paper trails through offshore accounts that funded organized crime, tracing cryptocurrency flows that supported money laundering operations. My life consisted of encrypted hard drives, hostile interrogations, and the constant vigilance required when investigating people who eliminated problems permanently. The satisfaction of freezing a crime syndicate's assets just before their next major operation. Immeasurable. But my family never understood why I'd chosen to make enemies of the world's most dangerous criminals. My sister Mia took the golden path our parents had mapped out for both of us. Stanford, MBA. Elite consulting firm. Strategic marriage to James Blackstone, heir to a banking empire built on 3 generations of questionable but legal investments. When their engagement announcement arrived, I was finishing a 6-month undercover operation, exposing a cryptocurrency exchange that had been laundering cartel money. We were on the verge of a breakthrough that could dismantle an entire network. And leaving would mean months of work lost. But I'd already missed countless family milestones. Missing Mia's wedding wasn't an option, even if it meant compromising my current investigation. I arranged for my partner to handle the final phase and flew to New York 2 weeks before the wedding. The timeline was tight, but it gave me enough opportunity to properly prepare and spend time with family before the ceremony. My homecoming was a masterclass in passive aggression. Mom embraced me with tears that felt more performative than genuine. "Alex, you look so thin. And those scars on your hands, couldn't you have gotten them covered somehow? We've told the Blackstones you work in international financial consulting. But now they'll ask questions. I don't need a cover story." "Mom, what I do isn't shameful." "Of course not. But James's family is very traditional. What will they think when they see you without a date? They'll think I'm confident enough in my worth that I don't need validation through a relationship." But I knew Mom's concerns weren't entirely about appearances. The Blackstones commanded the kind of influence that could make inconvenient people disappear from professional circles entirely. The shopping expedition was an exercise in family diplomacy. Mom rejected my first 6 outfit choices. What she really meant was they didn't hide the knife scar across my collarbone. Courtesy of a money launderer in Cambodia who'd taken our investigation personally. "This charcoal suit is perfect," I insisted, choosing something that looked professional while allowing freedom of movement. "It makes you look like a federal agent." Mom protested. "You could look so sophisticated if you just tried." That evening, I overheard a call between Mia and James that confirmed my worst fears. "Yes, Alex is finally here," Mia whispered in the kitchen. "No date?" "Obviously. James, please just tell your family not to ask too many questions about the consulting work. You know how intense Alex gets about financial regulations." I left before hearing James's response. But the damage was done. My own sister was afraid I'd embarrass her by talking honestly about my work. Dad found me on the balcony at midnight, 2 whiskeys in hand. "Can't sleep." He settled beside me, with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent years waiting for late-night crisis calls. Just adjusting to being back. The half-truth tasted bitter. His gentle smile suggested he wasn't buying it. "You know, my old partner from the force, his daughter works for Treasury's Financial Intelligence Unit now." She mentioned this investigator who developed new methods for tracking organized crime finances. Said this person's work had helped break up several major operations. He looked at me with recognition that hit like a physical blow. She said this investigator worked under assumed identities, took serious risks, probably saved a lot of lives by cutting off criminal funding. Tears blurred my vision. "You never told me you knew. Figured you weren't doing it for recognition." He squeezed my shoulder. "Go to this wedding. Be yourself. The people who matter will recognize what you're worth." The wedding morning began in chaos. My family left early for bridal preparations, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the secure messages from my partner about the ongoing cryptocurrency investigation. A major development had occurred. We'd identified the exchange's primary money laundering clients, but my team could handle it without compromising my cover. I stared at my reflection, the polished wedding guest my family wanted. And the battle-scarred investigator I'd become. The person who'd traced blood money through 14 countries. Who'd testified against organized crime bosses. Who'd survived 3 serious threats on my life. Taking a cab to the Meridian Club, an exclusive venue that probably cost more than most people made in a year, I felt the familiar weight of being underestimated. The driver whistled as we pulled up to the marble facade. Hell of a party. Huh, he said. Watching luxury cars cruise past us. I tipped him generously and stepped into the lion's den. The venue screamed old money, crystal chandeliers worth more than small houses. Imported marble that had likely been quarried under questionable labor conditions. Gold fixtures that could fund educational programs for entire communities. Everything beautiful. Everything morally ambiguous. Mom spotted me immediately. Alex. Thank God. The ceremony starts soon. Where's your guest? She added. Scanning behind me, hopefully. Mom? I told you I was coming alone. Before I could elaborate, James's mother, Victoria Blackstone, materialized beside us. Victoria was the kind of woman who'd perfected the art of the polite character assassination, every word a calculated strike. Elena. Wonderful to see you. And you must be Alex. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. We've heard about your financial consulting work. The pause before consulting made it sound like a euphemism for something criminal. International financial consulting. Specializing in regulatory compliance. I replied smoothly. Sticking to the agreed-upon cover story. How interesting. Victoria's expression suggested I'd confessed to being a professional tax evader. Well, I'm sure it keeps you busy with all that traveling. The ceremony took place in the club's garden, where a small fortune in white roses created a backdrop for matrimony. I found myself relegated to the back rows, where James's cousins had strategically placed their purses to block empty seats. Sorry. Saved for family. One said, without looking up from her phone. I eventually found a seat behind a decorative column. Watching my sister marry into a family that treated me like an embarrassing footnote to their pristine story. As Mia walked down the aisle, radiant in her custom gown, I felt the familiar complex knot of emotions: love for my sister, pride in her happiness, and the sharp ache of knowing she'd chosen a world that had no place for people like me. The officiant spoke about the sacred bonds of traditional marriage, about carrying on family legacies and building generational wealth. The subtext was clear: people like me, with our dangerous jobs and unconventional lives, were aberrations to be tolerated, not celebrated. During the photo session, I was systematically excluded from the important shots. When finally included in a few mandatory family photos, the photographer positioned me at the edge, easily cropped out later. The cocktail hour was a masterclass in subtle ostracism. I stood alone, nursing champagne while discreetly checking secure messages about the cryptocurrency investigation. My partner had successfully traced another major transaction. But I couldn't respond properly without revealing the nature of my real work. Near the bar, James's uncle held court with his philosophy. The problem with all these government regulators is they stifle innovation. Real prosperity comes from business freedom, from building wealth, without bureaucratic interference. I took another sip and moved away before I said something that would end up as family gossip for years. Passing a cluster of James's female relatives, I caught fragments of their assessment. Those shoes, so practical. Like she's ready to run. And that haircut, when did she last see a proper stylist? At the bar, I encountered James's cousin Derek. Alex. Right. Still playing financial compliance officer. I work in international financial consulting. I corrected, maintaining the cover story. He yawned dramatically. Sounds tedious. No husband. No kids to come home to. What's the endgame here? Building a career that matters to me. Right. Right. Very modern. The dismissal in his voice was absolute. As I walked away, I heard Victoria explaining me to her social circle. We're trying to be supportive of Mia despite her family complications. They're nice people. Just not kite our social circle. The sister, especially well. You can see for yourself. Such unusual priorities. The bartender caught my eye as he handed me a fresh drink. Family events. Huh? He said quietly. I've worked hundreds of these affairs. There's always one family member who gets the cold shoulder. Usually the most interesting person in the room. His small kindness was a lifeline in the sea of hostility. Dr. Sarah Kim, an old family friend, approached with a genuine smile and gave me my first real conversation of the day. She asked thoughtful questions about financial consulting. Seemed genuinely impressed by the international scope of the work. Our conversation was interrupted by my phone buzzing with a secure message. The cryptocurrency situation had evolved. They'd identified a major client, but my financial analysis wasn't urgently needed since my partner was handling it. As Dr. Kim was pulled away by other guests, a distinguished older man who'd been observing me from across the room approached with purpose. I couldn't help but overhear part of your conversation, he said, extending his hand with military precision. Marcus Webb. I'm Victoria's brother. I shook his hand, noting the calluses that suggested he wasn't just another trust fund heir. I understand you work in international financial consulting. Yes? Primarily regulatory compliance and risk assessment. Interesting field. I do security consulting myself, primarily helping corporations assess financial vulnerabilities. Something about his specific knowledge felt different from the casual dismissiveness I'd encountered all day. Before I could probe further, the wedding coordinator announced dinner service was beginning. The entrance to the dining hall was choreographed like a royal presentation. The DJ announced each member of the wedding party to thunderous applause as couples swept in arm. And finally, Alex Chen, the bride's sister, came the announcement. The applause noticeably dimmed as I entered alone. Whispers following me across the marble floor, like a wake of judgment. I found my assigned table in the far corner of the room, strategically positioned behind a decorative screen that blocked most of the main festivities. My tablemates were James's elderly great-aunt, with hearing aids, 2 ancient cousins who seemed to be napping upright, and the club's longtime janitor. We were the island of misfit toys, safely quarantined from the real celebration. During dinner, James's sister Rachel delivered a toast loaded with subtext. In welcoming Mia to our family, she concluded with a pointed glance in my direction. We're so grateful she understands the importance of contributing to society through business excellence and family values. Not just well-intentioned, but ultimately temporary career obsessions. Several guests turned to look at me, nodding approvingly at Rachel's diplomatic character assassination. When the dancing began, Mom appeared at my table, clearly mortified by my isolation. Alex, darling, James's father knows a lovely single man here, Thomas Thornfield. A friend of the family. Very successful investment banker. Let me introduce you. Mom. I'm not interested in being set up at my sister's wedding. But you look so lonely sitting here. Everyone else is paired up. I just don't understand why you make things so difficult. Would it kill you to wear some jewelry? Style your hair more femininely. You could be so beautiful if you just tried. Her words hit like physical blows, each one landing exactly where she'd aimed. Before I could respond, Victoria materialized beside us like a perfectly coiffed vulture. Elena. I was just telling the Hendersons about Mia's sister. You know, she could be quite striking if she put in some effort, she said to my mother, as if I were a piece of furniture being appraised. I excused myself to the restroom. But even there, escape was impossible. As I entered a stall, Rachel and another bridesmaid arrived, their conversation continuing as if I'd ceased to exist. Can you believe Alex? Rachel's voice dripped with disdain. The way she talks about her consulting job like she's changing the world. So pretentious. And that suit, it's like she's trying to prove some feminist point. Mia says she's always been difficult. The other woman replied. No wonder she's alone. Who wants to deal with someone that intense about regulatory compliance? Their casual cruelty was a masterclass in the 1,000 small cuts that families inflict on their black sheep. returning to the celebration with renewed determination to survive the evening with my dignity intact. I was blindsided by the ultimate humiliation. Rachel clinked her champagne glass, commanding attention for an impromptu announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, our beautiful bride has found her perfect match. But we seem to have forgotten about her sister. Alex, my blood turned to ice as every head in the room swiveled toward my corner table. Alex has traveled so far to be with us tonight from wherever financial consultants go these days. Singapore, Hong Kong, somewhere exotic and business-focused. I'm sure. But she's here all alone. And that's simply unacceptable at a Blackstone celebration. She scanned the room theatrically. Thomas Thornfield is also flying solo tonight. And he's one of Manhattan's most successful investment bankers. Thomas. Where are you? A visibly uncomfortable man in his 40s raised his hand reluctantly. Perfect. Could Alex and Thomas please join me on the dance floor for a special introduction? Everyone deserves to find their soulmate. A spotlight literally swung to illuminate me in my corner, then swept to Thomas. Then back to me. Hundreds of pairs of eyes bore into me like laser sights. The room fell into expectant silence. Mia looked mortified, but made no move to intervene. My parents stood frozen in awkward paralysis. I sat there, pulse hammering in my ears, calculating the distance to the nearest exit and wondering if I could escape this humiliation with any dignity intact. Then, across the room, I spotted Marcus Webb watching the scene unfold. His expression shifted from observational to what looked like recognition. Then, something approaching protective anger. As the uncomfortable silence stretched into eternity, I stood up, intending to quietly walk away and preserve whatever dignity remained. That's when Marcus Webb strode purposefully toward the band, spoke briefly to the conductor, and took the microphone. The music died. The room went silent. Ladies and gentlemen, I need a moment of your attention. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. For those who don't know me, I'm Marcus Webb, Victoria's brother. While most of you know me from family gatherings, my professional background is in security consulting, specifically. I advise financial institutions on protecting themselves from sophisticated criminal enterprises. My heart began racing as I realized where this was heading. Tonight, I have the unexpected privilege of meeting someone whose expertise in this field far exceeds my own. Someone whose work, though necessarily confidential, has protected major institutions from the kind of financial predators that most of us can't imagine. The room's attention shifted from predatory amusement to confused interest. Many of you met Alex tonight simply as Mia's sister. What you may not realize is that Alex works in the most challenging aspects of international financial security, the kind of work that requires not just exceptional analytical skills, but genuine courage. Victoria's mouth fell open. Rachel looked like she'd been slapped. Without violating any confidentialities, I can tell you that the consulting work Alex does puts her in contact with some very dangerous people. People who don't appreciate having their financial activities scrutinized. People who have been known to eliminate problems permanently. Marcus paused, letting that sink in. The reason Alex travels so much. The reason for that practical appearance. The reason for maintaining a low profile. It's not because this work doesn't matter. It's because it matters so much that Alex has chosen to accept serious personal risks to protect the financial systems that all of us depend on. He turned to face me directly. And with the formal dignity of his military bearing, he nodded respectfully. Alex, I don't know the specifics of your current cases, but I recognize someone who's chosen service over safety, substance over social approval. Thank you for doing work that most of us couldn't handle, even if we were brave enough to try. Complete silence descended on the ballroom. Then, from the back of the room, Dr. Kim began to clap. Slowly. One by one. Others joined in as Marcus's words sank in. The applause built until it filled the cavernous space. Marcus handed the microphone back and approached me with quiet intensity. I hope I haven't overstepped, he said. I couldn't watch that circus continue. Thank you, I managed, still processing what had just happened. I meant every word, he replied. I've worked with enough federal agencies to recognize someone operating undercover. Your consulting work is clearly more significant than you can discuss publicly. As Marcus introduced me to other professionals in the room, I watched the social dynamics shift in real time. Victoria and James's father were now competing to tell their friends about their incredibly accomplished and courageous relative. Their respect wasn't genuine, it was based on Marcus's implied revelation of my dangerous, important work. When my phone buzzed again, instead of hiding it, I addressed the room professionally. I apologize, but I need to respond to an urgent communication from my consulting partner. For the first time, all evening, I was being seen not as the family disappointment, but as someone whose work was both important and dangerous enough to command respect. Returning 10 minutes later, after coordinating with my partner about the cryptocurrency investigation, I found the entire atmosphere transformed. Guests who had spent the evening avoiding me were now approaching with respectful curiosity. Mia appeared beside me, her expression a mixture of guilt and newfound respect. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she whispered, as she hugged me tightly. "About the danger. About how important your work really is. Would it have mattered?" The question hung between us like a challenge. "I should have stood up for you," she said quietly. "I should have defended you regardless of what you do for work. It's your wedding day. You shouldn't have to defend anyone." Later, when a jazz standard came on that reminded me of the hotel bar where my team had celebrated after successfully completing our last major case, I walked confidently onto the dance floor alone. Dr. Lisa Park, who worked in financial compliance for a major investment firm, approached me with genuine interest. "Marcus mentioned you work in the more challenging aspects of financial consulting," she said carefully. "I've always wondered what that world is really like." For the first time all day, I was speaking with someone who understood that financial crime investigation was both intellectually demanding and personally dangerous. Then Rachel appeared beside us, clearly uncomfortable. "Alex, I wanted to apologize for earlier. If I'd understood the nature of your work." The conditionality of her apology based not on recognizing her behavior was wrong, but on my newly revealed dangerous job demanded a response. "Rachel," I said calmly, "treating someone with dignity shouldn't depend on their job description. The problem wasn't that you didn't know what I do for work. The problem was that you assumed my worth as a person was determined by my relationship status and fashion choices." Her face flushed. "But I wasn't done. I'll accept your apology. But understand that respect, given only after learning someone might be important, isn't respect at all. It's social calculation." The evening concluded with genuine conversations instead of social performance. As guests began departing, Mia hugged me again. "Have breakfast with me tomorrow. I want to hear about your work, whatever you can safely tell me about it." 1 month later, I was back in Hong Kong, coordinating the final phase of the cryptocurrency investigation that had successfully dismantled a major money laundering network. The operation had been a complete success, and 3 organized crime syndicates had been crippled when their financial infrastructure was exposed. Mia called for the first time since the wedding, asking carefully worded questions about my work, clearly understanding now that much of what I did couldn't be discussed openly. Our conversation lasted 2 hours, the longest and most honest we'd had in years. The wedding I'd dreaded had unexpectedly opened doors I hadn't known existed. Marcus's carefully worded public statement had sparked interest from several consulting firms that specialized in high-risk financial work, significantly expanding my career options. But more importantly, the experience had forced me to confront my own relationship with family acceptance. I'd spent years seeking approval from people who fundamentally didn't understand or value what mattered to me. 8 months later, I stood in a federal courthouse, testifying in the trial that had resulted from our cryptocurrency investigation. My parents and Mia sat in the public gallery, Mia having finally understood why I'd always been vague about my work locations and timeline. Marcus had provided a professional reference that helped me transition to a senior position with an international consulting firm that specialized in financial crime prevention. Even Victoria and James's father now spoke of me with pride, though their approval was based on Marcus's implications about my dangerous, important work, rather than understanding of who I actually was as a person. What mattered most was Mia's support, and her newfound respect for the sacrifices my career required. The following year, I accepted a partnership position with the consulting firm that Marcus had recommended me to. When Dr. Park and I established a new financial crimes unit for multinational corporations. It was with the full support of my family, something I couldn't have imagined before what we now call Marcus's intervention. The journey from family disappointment to hard-won acceptance hadn't been easy. But it had been necessary. Standing in our new Hong Kong office, watching the local investigators, we'd successfully traced their first major money laundering operation. I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from work that genuinely matters. My life might not follow conventional paths, but its value was undeniable both to me and to the financial institutions and law enforcement agencies that relied on our expertise. That evening, I video called Mia from my apartment overlooking Victoria Harbor. "You look content," she observed. "I am," I replied simply. "I'm exactly where I belong." And for the first time in years, that statement felt completely true. Story 2. When I was left out of the family trip, my dad replied, "They didn't want you there. How do you treat me when I give you $2,500 a month?" I answered. I thus barred them and cut off all of their money. I'm a 4-year-old man who was paying my parents $2,500 a month. Until last month. I believed I was being a good son. Not because I had to. It turns out that family vacation invitations are not extended to decent sons. Let me clarify. I was always the odd one out in my family while I was growing up. Emma, my 3-year-old younger sister, was the perfect kid. She was well liked by everyone, had good marks without trying, and exuded an easy charm that won everyone over. I was the reserved, industrious person who put in twice as much effort for half the credit. The partiality was overt. My parents gave Emma a huge sweet 16 celebration when she turned 16. Her whole class was invited. The community building was leased out, and a DJ was hired. I recall assisting with the table setup and carrying decorations, as my parents fussed over every little thing to make Emma's night flawless. 6 months later, on my 16th birthday, the 4 of us went to Applebee's. Mom only snapped one picture with her flip phone. For her 16th birthday, Emma received a brand new Honda Civic. Exactly what she wanted, bright red. Dad claimed it was practical and the price was good. So I bought a girl's bike from a garage sale. Mom responded that I was being ungrateful and that transportation was transportation, when I pointed out that it was obviously made for females. I was working part-time at a grocery shop and keeping my GPA at 4.2 inches high school, while Emma was out having fun. Mrs. Rodriguez, my manager, often to remark on how mature I was for a teenager. When other students called out, she would offer me additional shifts, since she knew I would show up and put in a lot of effort. I dreamed of leaving home and being successful. Therefore, I was saving every cent for college. Emma often received plaudits even though her grades were at best poor. When report cards were out, Mom would comment, "Emma is doing her best. Not everyone has the same innate intellectual aptitude as you." However, it was anticipated when I brought home consecutive as good work in passing. No celebration. No recognition. Observing how differently we were punished was the hardest part. When I was 17, I recall this one instance. My boss requested me to remain and assist with inventory. So I arrived home from work at the grocery store 20 minutes late, because I was careless and neglected to call. My parents grounded me for a week. Emma was texting and driving when she collided her vehicle with a mailbox the same month. Rather of punishing her, my parents spent the weekend discussing how accidents occur and assisting her in choosing a new vehicle. My parents were so preoccupied with getting Emma into a decent school when it came time for college applications that they hardly paid any attention when I was admitted to MIT on a full academic scholarship. I recall going downstairs to inform them the night I received my admission letter, nearly giddy with anticipation. Mom was baking Emma's favorite cookies, as Dad helped her with her college essay. Mom remarked, "That's nice, honey," without raising her gaze from the oven. "Mom, did you hear me? I got into MIT with a full scholarship." "Emma, make sure you mention your volunteer work in paragraph 3. That's great. Son, very practical choice." Dad glanced up from Emma's laptop and turned back to Emma right away. "Now, let's talk about this paragraph on leadership. This essay is so hard. I don't know why colleges want to know so much about us. Because they want to see who you really are. Sweetheart. Mon coude. You're such a special person. Any college would be lucky to have you. I stood there for another minute, hoping one of them would ask me about the program, or properly congratulate me. Instead, I heard Emma sigh dramatically. I threw myself into my studies at MIT, majoring in computer engineering. And while my classmates partied, I was either studying or working internships. That was pretty much the sum of my childhood. Emma's struggles were met with encouragement and support, and my accomplishments were met with indifference. My professors saw my commitment, and I spent my summers at tech companies learning everything I could about project management, systems architecture, and software development. My sophomore year, I was able to secure an internship at a startup that was eventually acquired by Google, which taught me more about the tech industry than any classroom could. Doctor. I was building something real, something that mattered. And my advanced algorithms instructor, Martinez, pulled me aside my junior year and told me I had real potential to do groundbreaking work in the field. He recommended me for a research position that resulted in my name appearing on 2 published papers before I even graduated. Mom would drive up to visit Emma every weekend with care packages and home-cooked meals. And when Emma called to say she wanted to drop out after her second year, Mom responded right away. Emma was having a hard time in her freshman year at a state school about 2 hours away, and she would call home to complain about her classes, her roommate, and her professors. I finished summa cum laude with a 3.97 gigapascals and got a position at a big computer business straight out of college, with a starting salary of $89. Ling ling ling. More money than I ever dreamed having. Of course. Honey. College isn't for everyone. You can always try again later when you're ready. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was living in a small studio apartment in Cambridge, eating ramen and rice to save money while paying off my meager student loans. While Emma, on the other hand, moved back home and got a part-time job at a boutique in the mall, working maybe 25 hours a week, spending the majority of her paycheck on clothes and nights out, and treating our parents' house like a hotel. At 25, I was earning 6 figures, promoted to senior developer, moved into a nice 1-bedroom apartment, began saving money, and occasionally dated. But my work took up most of my time. Emma was living in her childhood bedroom rentry, with her parents doing her laundry, and her father paying her auto insurance. I attended conferences, took online courses, and worked on side projects that became major features at my company because I was determined to stay up to date with the rapidly evolving tech industry. By the time I was 30, I was earning nearly $300,000 a year as a senior software architect, managing a team of 12 developers on significant client projects. Emma was still living at home, working part-time at the same boutique, dating a series of men who never seemed to stay. And I had a healthy investment portfolio, a nice apartment in Boston, and a firm belief in the work we were doing. I had been headhunted twice, but I stayed with my company because I believed in the work we were doing. Every time she brought the man home for Sunday dinner, Mom would swoon over him, and Emma would discuss their future together. I knew of at least 6 serious relationships that lasted 8 to 10 months. The pattern was always the same. Emma would fall hard and fast, usually for charming but untrustworthy guys. Marcus, who worked at a gym, persuaded her to lend him money for his business venture that never materialized. Then something would unavoidably go wrong, and she would spend weeks crying on her mother's shoulder about how bad men were, and she'd never find anyone. She just has such a big heart, Mom would say. She loves so deeply. There were Derek and Tyler, who cheated on her with Emma's best friend from high school, and Tyler, who was allegedly a musician but spent most of his time playing video games in Emma's bedroom. Someday, she'll find someone who deserves her. That's nice. Honey. Is she career-focused like you? Translation: please don't get serious and move even further away from the family. In the meantime, whenever I mentioned dating someone, the response was, at best, ambivalent. In reality, I had been in a couple of serious relationships, but they had never worked out. I had been working 60-hour weeks, trying to prove myself for a promotion. So, I didn't have much left over for relationship maintenance. When my last girlfriend, Jessica, broke up with me, she said I was too focused on work and emotionally unavailable. She was right. And this is where the $2,500 monthly payments began. 3 years ago, Dad had a heart attack. It wasn't a serious incident, but it was a wake-up call. When my mother called while I was in a client meeting, she was crying so much that I could hardly understand her. I excused myself and hurried to my car, where I listened to her tearfully explain that Dad had fallen at work and was in the emergency room. I drove straight to the hospital, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. And the 2-hour drive seemed to drag on forever. Mom was pacing the waiting room when I arrived, and Emma was sitting in a corner chair, looking through her phone. Dad was stable, and the doctor said it had been a minor heart attack, probably brought on by years of stress and bad eating, and that he would need to change his lifestyle, take medicine, and keep a close eye on his health. Dad's job at the manufacturing plant provided decent insurance, but it wasn't great. They'd always lived paycheck to paycheck, and his medical bills were mounting, even with insurance. There were co-pays, deductibles, and medication costs they hadn't budgeted for. Mom called me in tears during his recuperation to discuss their financial situation. Dad's doctor had prescribed 4 different medications, and the monthly cost was over $400, even with insurance coverage. Then there was the time off work. Dad had to take 8 weeks off for recovery, and while his job was protected, his income was reduced to short-term disability payments that barely covered half his normal salary. They were talking about selling the house. I don't know what we're going to do, Mommed during one of our phone calls. The mortgage is $1,800 a month. And with the utilities, insurance, and everything else, we need at least $2,200 just for basic expenses. Your father's disability payment is only $1. eBay. I couldn't stand the thought of my parents losing their home. This was the house I'd grown up in, where all our family memories were made. Despite all the partiality and bruised sentiments, I still loved my parents. They weren't awful people. They simply had blind spots when it came to Emma. How much do you need? I asked. Oh, honey, I couldn't ask you to. Mom. How much? She was silent for a minute. If we could just get some help with the mortgage for a few months. Maybe $2,000 or so. Just until your father gets back to work. Without hesitation, I offered to help. I started sending them $2,500 every month. Enough to cover their mortgage, utilities, and give them some breathing room for emergencies. I never asked for anything in return. Never made them feel bad about needing help. I merely discreetly deposited the money every first of the month, typically with a letter like, "Hope this helps. Love you guys." The relief in Mom's voice was immediate. "You're such a good son," she said, crying again. But this time with gratitude, instead of despair. "We don't know what we'd do without you." Dad called me that evening, his voice thick with emotion. "Son, I don't know how to thank you. This means everything to us. You don't need to thank me. Dad. That's what family is for. We're very proud of you." He continued. "You've truly created something of yourself. We're blessed to have such a successful, giving son." I felt like I belonged in the family for the first time in years. That my success meant more to them than merely being a contrast to Emma's hardships. I was making a contribution, offering assistance, and being the kind of son they could take pride in. After 3 months, Dad returned to work after a full recovery. But I continued to send the money. Their financial circumstances had not significantly improved. Their income and expenses remained unchanged. They also had continuing medical expenses now. Dad required daily medicine, yearly stress tests, and quarterly cardiologist checkups. Their monthly budget had grown dependent on the $2. Wubei. I felt good about supporting them for 3 years. I couldn't afford the sports vehicle I wanted or update my flat, but family comes first. Right. I reasoned that by investing in our connection, I was demonstrating my concern for them. I felt like I was purchasing my position in the family each month when I contributed the money, demonstrating that I was a deserving son. In February, when the family group chat became silent, I should have realized something was wrong. Talk about everyone's plans, work-related drama, and random memes was the norm. From the store, Emma would email screenshots of amusing exchanges with customers. Mom would post photos of the new recipes she was experimenting with. And every now and then, Dad would stop by and tell us funny stories that made us all mature. Abruptly, however, there was radio silence. I would either receive brief responses or be completely ignored when I attempted to strike up a conversation. I would send a snapshot of something intriguing from work, like a team lunch photo or a clever new server configuration, and get no response. I would receive one-word responses when I asked about weekend plans. Emma would reply back that she was busy. Mom would say, "Quiet weekend. Perhaps everyone was just busy." I reasoned. February had been an unusually busy month for me. For months, I had been preoccupied with the introduction of a significant product upgrade. Perhaps I missed some family turmoil since I was too preoccupied with my own affairs. I assumed they were all enthralled with the excitement when Mom discussed Emma's new relationship with Jake during one of our weekly conversations. Emma's connections were always familial. Within the first week of learning about a person, Mom would become enamored with him and invite him to Sunday meals. Dad would use the first few visits to assess the new partner by probing him about his ambitions, work, and 5-year plan. Usually, when I called my mother once a week, I would learn about all of this secondhand. Jake seems like a genuinely kind person. One discussion, Mom had cried. He drives a lovely vehicle, has a decent job, and is very kind to Emma. Last weekend, they visited that upscale eatery in the downtown area. He didn't cut any corners. I'd made the right sounds. Encouraging. Emma was glad to have found someone who seemed to be taking good care of her. She had dated a series of losers. Perhaps Jake would be different. Perhaps this was the reason for the silence in the family conversation. Emma's new connection had them all enmeshed. When March finally arrived, I saw the social media postings. It seemed subtle at first. Emma began sharing more photos of herself online, this time with a very joyful and radiant appearance. For someone in a new relationship, this is normal. After that, I noticed that I was missing from group shots, which wasn't totally out of the ordinary, given that I lived 2 hours away and couldn't attend every family get-together. However, these pictures had a unique quality. Everyone seemed to be preparing something special or sharing some inside joke. One photo showed Emma, Jake, Mom, and Dad seated at the kitchen table, documents strewn in front of them. The message simply said, "Planning mode activated," and included several emojis of excitement. I assumed Emma was organizing a romantic holiday with Jake or a ladies' trip when she posted a picture of herself putting on swimming costumes with the remark, "Getting ready for paradise. Well done." After the catastrophe with Derek, she was entitled to have fun. Mom shared a photo of herself in the mall a few days later, carrying shopping bags from different retailers. Swimwear store Victoria's Secret Bath and Body Works. The caption said, "The best kind of shopping is vacation shopping." I thought she and her father were finally going on a vacation together, so I left a heart-shaped remark. They were worthy. Despite my monthly assistance, Mom had been anxious about money, and Dad had been working extra hours at the factory since his recuperation in an attempt to replenish their emergency fund. Then I began to notice other things. However, Emma shared a picture of herself and Jake clutching brochures and smiling at a vacation agency. Mom posted a screen grab of a weather app that showed 82 degrees temps and bright sky. Dad, who didn't post much on social media, published an article from a travel site called Hawaii that listed the top hidden beauties in Hawaii. I took notice of it. I told myself I was being too suspicious. But the pieces began to fit together. Perhaps they were all just anticipating Emma and Jake's journey. It's possible that Mom was enjoying her daughter's romantic retreat. That would be normal. Emma's life always delighted Mom more than her own. Then I noticed a snapshot of a Hawaii flight ticket confirmation that my dad had posted. 7 people. 7. I spent 10 minutes staring at the screenshot while recalling and counting. There were 5 people in the family group chat: Emma, Jake, Mom, Dad, and myself. Who else was traveling on this flight? If there were 7, in search of hints. I read through Emma's most recent entries. 2 weeks ago. There was a picture of her dining with Jake and 2 other individuals who I didn't identify right away. With several tropical emojis. The caption said, "Square goals." Upon closer inspection, I saw that one of them was Marcus, Emma's ex-boyfriend from a year before, who had managed to maintain friendship with the family. Sarah, Emma's high school closest friend, was the other. My parents had always regarded her as a second daughter. It dawned on me then. The mom, Dad, Emma, her boyfriend Jake, and I were the 5 people on the family group chat. Marcus and Sarah had been invited if there were 7 travelers. They hadn't invited me. But they had invited Emma's ex-boyfriend. In the hopes that I had misinterpreted something, I reread Dad's message. Not at all. On April 15th. 7 people will leave for a week-long stay in Maui. I looked at my schedule. That week, I didn't have any vacation plans. I hadn't even been informed that I needed to make plans for vacation. I feverishly searched through everyone's social media for the next hour, searching for any mention of me or any clue that I was meant to be on this trip. Nothing. Emma's joy in spending time with her family in paradise. Mom's posts on spending time with the people that are most important. Dad's infrequent social media outburst. Distributing articles on picturesque driving, luas, and snorkeling. I was feeling nauseous. I wasn't simply not invited to this trip. I had been purposely left out of this family trip. For weeks. Perhaps months. They had been preparing this. And not a single one of them had considered bringing it up to me. Not even casually. The posts on social media were the worst. They had more in mind than a simple vacation. They were recording their joy so that everyone, including me, could see it. They wanted me to know that I would not be joining them. Or they had completely forgotten about me since they were so focused on their plans. Which choice hurt more? I couldn't tell. That night, despite the knot in my gut, I tried to seem casual when I contacted my mother. Hello. Mother. I saw Dad's Hawaii post. That sounds fantastic. What time are you all leaving? A pause occurred. A lengthy silence. The TV was playing in the background. Mom liked watching certain cookery shows in the evenings. Oh. That. Then again. Next month. A little family vacation. Vacation with the family. I was unable to control my bewilderment. Was it my responsibility to make my own travel arrangements? There were no specifics in the group conversation that I could notice. This time, the pause is longer. I heard her inhale deeply. This vacation is actually more for Emma. Sweetie. We felt that she needed some family support since she has been dealing with a lot at work and in her relationships. We understand how difficult it is for you to take time off. And you're constantly so busy with your work anyway. The words struck me like a punch to the body. Emma has experienced a lot. I was working 60-hour weeks and paying them $2,500 a month. But Emma, who lived rent-free and worked part-time at a boutique, had gone through more. Mom. I can take a break. I've saved up a lot of vacation days. I haven't taken any vacation time in over a year since I've been working so hard. Yes. Honey. But we've already arranged everything. She drifted off. And the place we leased had only so many bedrooms. How many bedrooms is it equipped with? It has 4 bedrooms. All right. 1 is for Marcus. 1 is for Sarah and her boyfriend Chris. 1 is for Emma and Jake. And 1 is for myself and my father. It's ideal for our intended group. Chris, Sarah's boyfriend. They didn't have space for me. But they did have space for Chris, Sarah's boyfriend, who I'd met precisely twice at family cookouts. Yes. I responded. My throat constricted. You guys had a good time. Oh. Don't act like way. My love. These things are like that. You know. Simply said. It's simpler when the group gets along. Compatible. That word was like a bone trapped in my throat. How compatible everyone is about the same age. You know. They have a common interest in beach activities, nightlife, and similar pursuits. We felt a more relaxed vacation could be more pleasant for you, since you're always so focused on your job. If necessary, there could be a place where you might still finish some work. What I was hearing was unbelievable. They concluded that since I may want to check my email periodically, I wouldn't enjoy going to Hawaii with my family. I'm 34. Mom. Without making it a work trip, I believe I can manage a beach holiday. I am aware. We've already made all the arrangements. And this specific bunch really gets along beautifully. Perhaps we can organize something that involves everyone the next time. But I was aware that there would never be another chance. Not like this. Isn't it? Well? Enjoy yourself. I'm hoping for pleasant weather. Before she could continue, I hung up. My hands were trembling from pain and anger. The weeks that followed were agony. I saw my family share airport selfies, packing pictures, and countdown postings. Emma spoke about how excited she was to give surfing a try. Mom shared images of the tour guides she had purchased, emphasizing eateries and points of interest. Dad posted an article with advice on underwater photography that included Maui's top snorkeling locations. I continued to submit the $2.500 payment each month despite everything. As planned, I deposited the funds into their account on April 1. Money that most likely went toward paying for their trip to Hawaii. The trip to which I was not invited. I didn't miss the irony. Here I was paying for a family trip that I had been left out of. While I waited at home working overtime and feigning not to be saddened by their rejection, every money I contributed went toward their paradise holiday. On a Tuesday, they departed. Emma shared a group shot from the airport. So I knew. They were all 7 smiling and waving their boarding cards. Sarah, her parents, Emma, Jake, Marcus, and even her boyfriend, Chris, whom I had met just twice at family get-togethers and who seemed to be more aware of their holiday itinerary than I was. The caption on the picture read, "Paradise. Here we come. Family time is a blessing." Time spent with the family was like a dagger to the belly. Although I was also a member of their family, it seems that I wasn't the kind that was important for creating memories. I couldn't fit in there. But Sarah's boyfriend could. One of the longest weeks of my life was that one. They posted something fresh every day from their heavenly retreat. Pictures of the beach where everyone is having fun and laughing in the pristine ocean. They were all dressed up and seemed to be the ideal vacation bunch. Enjoying sunset meals at upscale restaurants. Ziplining across the jungle. Luau dance. Snorkeling. And group activities. As everyone applauded from the beach, Emma shared a video of herself learning to surf. Stumbling on the board. Mom posted pictures of small umbrellas and tropical beverages. Her face was beaming with happiness and ease. Even though Dad didn't usually use social media, he was posting many times a day. Waterfalls, hiking paths, and scenic roads. I was working late in my apartment, trying not to think about how much this hurt, while they were having a great time. To distract myself from the reality that my family was spending time together and creating memories without me, I pushed myself into my job, staying at the office until 9 or 10 every night, taking on additional projects, volunteering for weekend work, and doing everything else I could. Being excluded wasn't even the hardest part. The fact that they hadn't even thought about adding me was the realization. There was no oversight or misunderstanding here. They had deliberately decided that I had no place on their family holiday. My coworkers saw my attitude and thought, "You know who would ruin this fun group dynamic? My son. Brother. Who has been providing for us financially for 3 years." But I was still good enough to send them money every month. My boss, Michael, drew me aside and advised that I take a break after Sarah from marketing asked me how I was doing at a team meeting, pointing out that I was weary. "You've been pushing yourself pretty hard lately," he remarked. "When's the last time you took a vacation?" I almost laughed. When was the last time I went on vacation? Well, The family was supposed to go to Hawaii. But I guess I wasn't family enough to be invited. When they returned, Mom called me, as if nothing had happened. And I waited for it to ring twice before answering. Saving myself for what I knew would be an awkward conversation. How was Hawaii? Since I seemed to be a glutton for torture, I inquired. Oh. It was fantastic. We had a great time. And Emma needed it. She's been really stressed lately with work and everything. But what is she stressed about? Her part-time job at a boutique. I saw the pictures. And it looked like an amazing trip. Her voice was bright and excited. As if she were speaking to a friend, rather than the son she purposefully left out of the trip. You should have seen the sunset from our lanai on the first night. It was just amazing. Can you believe that your father even attempted snorkeling? Emma got some stunning photos underwater. And there were brilliant yellow fish all over the place. Seemingly unaware of how painful it was to hear about the family vacation I had been left out of. She spent 20 minutes telling me about all the fun they had had, including the romantic dinners, beach activities, and hiking adventures, as well as how Jake had proposed to Emma on the beach at sunset and how everyone there had celebrated. When she finally took a moment to breathe, I asked the question that had been bothering me for weeks. Mom, why wasn't I invited? There was complete awkward silence. And I could hear the TV in the background. Jake had proposed. Emma was engaged. And I had learned of it through a post-vacation phone call, not because anyone had thought to include me in the moment or even tell me it was planned. The Hawaii trip. Why wasn't I invited? You mentioned it was a family vacation. But I'm family, too. Aren't I? More silence. Then a heavy sigh. Oh. Sweetie. You know how these things are. It was actually Emma's trip. And she invited who she wanted to invite. She liked to watch some daytime talk shows while cleaning the house. Impose I'm her brother. I know. But you two have never been that close. Emma truly wanted this to be a restful time with people she's comfortable with. So we didn't want to impose on her guest list. Emma's trip. A family vacation had turned into Emma's trip. And she had the veto power over which family members could attend. My own sister wasn't comfortable enough with me to want me on a family vacation. So Emma decided who gets to go. Well, not exactly. You know how you can be sometimes always checking your phone for work-related stuff. Talking about your projects. She wanted it to be fun and carefree. With people you're comfortable with. That hurt more than I anticipated. This had shown me exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. I was the ATM. Not a member. I let it go. But the hurt lingered. And for the next 2 weeks, I went through the motions of our normal family relationship. But look. Honey. I don't want to get into this. The trip is over. And it was lovely. Maybe we can all go together again. The monthly money transfer that I'd been receiving for 3 years. The weekly phone calls with Mom, in which she would give me updates on Emma's wedding preparations and Dad's most recent work-related projects. The occasional text message in the group chat, concerning uninteresting topics like the weather or TV shows, all of these things felt different now. Then Dad called me on a Saturday afternoon. Which was unusual because he usually avoided phone calls and preferred to let Mom handle the family communications. As if we were all acting, as if this huge betrayal hadn't occurred. As if they hadn't demonstrated to me how much I mattered to them when it came time to decide who belonged on a family vacation. Son. I wanted to talk to you about something. His voice sounded tired. And I instantly worried something was wrong with his health because the heart attack was still relatively recent. And I had been watching for signs that he might be overdoing it. He guarded Saturday afternoons, which he used for yard work or watching sports. Yes. Dad. How are you? Is everything all right? Your mother told me during our return from Hawaii that you were upset that you weren't invited. And I felt sick to my stomach. She had told him. Of course. And they talked about my reaction as if it were a problem they had to solve. Oh. Yeah. The words struck me like a physical blow. And I felt as if someone had punched me in the chest. What Emma explicitly requested that you not be allowed. Look. I want you to understand something. He stopped. And I could hear him take a long breath. I couldn't talk. My own sister had specifically asked that I be left out of a family vacation. So it wasn't a space issue. A miscommunication. or an oversight. She said you just bring down the mood. Constantly working on your laptop, or talking about your job. She wanted this to be fun and relaxed. And she didn't think you'd fit in with the group dynamic she was going for. Don't invite my brother. Emma had remarked after glancing at the list of invites. We wanted to help Emma through a difficult time with her job and relationships. And sometimes that means making tough decisions about who to include in family activities. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, Dad said in a matter-of-fact tone. But I wanted you to hear it straight. You're doing fine on your own. You've got your career, your money, your success. Emma needs more support right now. More attention. This trip was about helping her heal and move forward. Difficult choices. I repeated numbly. She's our daughter. And she needed this vacation. Then something snapped inside me. 3 years of sending them money every month. They perceived me as someone who didn't deserve to be involved in family events since I was doing well on my own after I had been the responsible son. The financial fallback. And the one they could rely on when times came rough for 3 years. I pay you $2. $500 a month. I added softly. What I have been sending you and Mom $2. $500 a month for 3 years. Dad. That's $90. 000 that I have given you. Son. We appreciate that. But this is how you treat me. My voice was rising now, with hurt and anger erupting in equal measure. My sister specifically asked that I be left out of a family vacation. And you believe that's fair? Hold on. No. Dad. You hold on. I've been providing for you financially for the past 3 years. I've been the responsible one. The good son. And the one who looks after the family. When it comes time for a family vacation, I'm not even worth thinking about. It's not about worth. It's about what Emma needed. You've made it clear where I stand in this family. Dad was silent for a moment. Then spoke again with a defensive tone. You're being dramatic. It was only one trip. I'm good enough to pay your bills. But not good enough to go on your vacations. I'm good enough to be your financial safety net. But not good enough to be part of your family's memories. I've been providing for you financially for years. And you guys couldn't even bother to invite me on a vacation that I probably helped pay for. Your money, son. That money was a gift. You can't hold it over our heads now. Just one trip. Dad. Do you realize how this looks from my perspective? He believed that I was trying to buy my way into every family activity. I offered to help because I love you and because I wanted to make sure you didn't lose your house after Dad's heart attack. Is that what you think this has been? Well. Yes. We accepted your offer of help with gratitude. You're upset. I understand. But you can't punish the entire family because Emma made one decision about one vacation. I'm done. I thought we were a family. We are a family. No. Dad. Families don't exclude each other from vacations while cashing their checks. That's not family. That's a business transaction. Wait a minute. No. There's nothing to wait for. I've already made up my mind. I hung up and opened my banking app right away. I'm done. I'm done with the monthly payments. I'm done with being treated like an ATM rather than a son. I'm done with a family that believes I'm good enough to support their lifestyle but not good enough to be a part of their lives. After canceling the automatic transfer for May, which was supposed to happen in 3 days, I did something I never would have done before. I blocked Emma and my parents' numbers. Unfriended them on social media. Removed them from my lists of followers. And even left a brief message in the family group chat. I figured you might not want me in family chats either. Since I'm not wanted on family vacations. After a deafening 6 hours of silence, the messages began to pour in. They couldn't text or call my phone. But they found other ways. Including Facebook Messenger before I blocked them there. My first email, "Please don't do this," was 3 pages long. And it apologized for the Hawaii situation. Said they'd made a mistake. And promised to include me in future trips. However, it went on to explain why Emma had been justified in not wanting me there. How I could be intense about work at times. How I didn't always read social situations well. And how I might have changed the dynamic of their fun group. I also received DMs on Instagram, LinkedIn messages, emails to both my personal and work accounts, and even contacted my few mutual friends to ask them to forward messages. Dad was more blunt and furious, accusing me of being selfish, of using money to manipulate the family, and of leaving them when they needed me most. His letters had subject lines like, "We need to talk and this is ridiculous." Even her apologies was an insult. The most intriguing development was Emma's messages, which began with anger. How dare I punish the entire family because of one vacation? How I was being a spoiled brat. How my money didn't buy me a spot on every family activity. He claimed that I was being a spoiled brat who couldn't handle not getting my way for once. I wasn't blind to the irony of him calling me spoiled while demanding my money back. "You can't buy love," she actually said, which was amazing coming from someone who had been dependent on me for years. But as days passed and I didn't respond, she wrote in one email, her tone turning to panic, "I didn't mean you could never come on trips." She wrote, "I just thought that particular group worked well together." Then, "Mom and Dad are really stressed about money now. You're taking this way too seriously." And lastly, "I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't want you in Hawaii. But you can't simply leave the family because of this. We need you." There it was. "We don't love you. We miss you. Or we're sorry we upset you. You're hurting them to get even with me. And that's unfair." YouTube recently released a new feature called Hype. If you're interested in this story, hit the hype button, which tells YouTube, "This video deserves to blow up. We need you because I was the source of their monthly financial stability, and without me they were in trouble."